I began field work in February 2011 and completed it by the end of May 2012. The research is a case study of the multiple Indigenous experiences today and the practices of Indigenous people in Ottawa, Ontario. I interviewed around 30 research participants, some of them completing semi-structured interviews and others providing life histories. To do this, I used extensive field notes and narrative to privilege the words of Indigenous people and to understate my own voice and those of other theorists whenever possible. I also employed visual ethnography as a way to use mixed methods within the research and to privilege the oral tradition, which is important to many Indigenous cultures. I invite you along this journey that I took. Cook's Gem, all my relations.
Acknowledge that. I'll acknowledge the medicine, I'll acknowledge myself, I'll acknowledge the Creator, and I acknowledge my relationship with the Creator. So I do that, and then in the city too, there are other practices that help us kind of be who we are, which for me is a smudging, burning the medicines, and for myself just focusing, cleansing myself and grounding myself, cleansing the household, walking into somebody's house where they've burned the medicine and you feel this is a good place to be. Eh? Mm-hmm. And also I spent a lot of time around Wabano, the health center here, the Aboriginal Health Center. Mm-hmm. And they've worked hard at making it a visual and emotional and spiritual, totally cultural environment as best they can, eh? So that when people walk in, they can feel that that's what it is in there. Eh? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I feel that too when I walk in, and everybody who walks in there says, oh, it's so nice to be here, like including non-Aboriginal people, eh? But as an Aboriginal person, it's confirmation, eh?
I guess my home is my home wherever it is, and I take my things with me. An example is I was given an eagle whistle here a couple years ago, so I have that here. You know, so those things, I have a drum, I have different things that I've been given over the years, and that comes with me, and that's part of my culture and who I am. I sing, I've been given a number of songs, so I sing, so I do that. You know, various times if it strikes me.
So what would you say connects you to your Aboriginal identity?
Mind and spirit. Mm-hmm. Those are what keeps it all alive. Just remembering who you are, where you came from, remembering your values and everything that you've learned. Never forget your teachers. Never, because they are the ones that kind of brought everything together. Having a number of teachers is very special, especially to me. So culture is not just about like objects. Culture is not just about language, albeit they are important elements, but that's not what culture is all about. Culture is about an idea of understanding, an idea, and the ways you kind of view everything around you, and the ways in which you take holistic approaches to understanding.
I mean, partially it's a little bit like getting away from the city once in a while, but like, you know, going up to my mom's farm or going to sweats a little bit out of town. I know there's one sweat lodge in Ottawa that I'm aware of. There might be even more, but you know, within the city, I mean, keeping and, you know, practicing, you know, some of my own traditions at home is definitely part of it. And then often kind of relying on, you know, whatever's going on with the wider Aboriginal community to really, you know, find a place to plug into, or, interact with people. And then I think there's different aspects where different traditions and heritages are being created here in the city.
I felt well positioned to undertake this project as a First Nations person from the Secwepemc Nation who had resided in Ottawa for 3 years. I also had a local network as well as an existing national network that was established through previous employment with an Indigenous policy research think tank and work within Indigenous organizations in British Columbia.
I see a number of Aboriginal communities within this urban setting, and I think everywhere. So I don't see a single, and I would, and I don't like the idea of governments trying to suggest or create an urban Aboriginal center. There's no such thing. That doesn't respect the distinct cultures that we have. It's like trying to say we're all the same. Well, we're not. And not all First Nations are the same.
Oh, absolutely. I think, there seems to be a debate, is there a new and emerging a different culture than, say, our traditional cultures? And I haven't reconciled in my own mind, but I think there certainly is. Our identities don't end at a reserve border. I mean, I think we've almost allowed ourselves to be trapped in that way of thinking that unless you have a status card to live within those territories, that's where the culture resides. And I think first off, we're treaty people, and we have this broader territory. This was always our land. So wherever we go, we're still in our community, whether or not we think of it as the actual reserve boundary or otherwise. When I was working in downtown Toronto with the populations there, it was funny how many people come from Northern First Nation communities and come down to Toronto for whatever reason, and that would be the first time they went to a sweat or met with an elder or learned about the drum or any of these things that sometimes we take for granted. So sometimes the city is actually the keepers of the culture are found in the cities as often as it is remotely. I think it becomes a little more muddled when someone may have been adopted or unaware of their First Nation ancestry other than they are First Nations. And so they're looking and reaching, so they'll find different traditions from different cultures and they build something that makes sense to them. And I think that's where we can have a discussion about identity and is it something different than it is otherwise. But, I'm a firm believer that we need to make sure and recognize and acknowledge that there is an urban peoples, and they're the same peoples as on reserve, and their culture is just as relevant, and cultures evolve and adapt, and we should, it's natural and we should expect it to.
Rights. I don't feel like I have the rights. I don't feel like I have hunting rights, let's say, or those kind of rights here in Ontario. And if I went back home, I totally feel like I could, go hunting if I wanted to, or trapping, or pick berries anywhere I wanted to. Doesn't really, belong to anybody's land, type of thing. So here, what I do, my connection is when I didn't have a job for that little while, a friend from Kitigan-Zibi had, showed up at my doorstep with an entire, deer chopped into hamburger and sausage and steaks and roasts, and I lived off that deer for a whole winter. Wow. And, so it's their land. He was Algonquin, and they got the deer from their Algonquin territory, and that felt more right. That felt that, it still felt like community, but it was their, land. They were taking care of me in their land, and I felt, I would do that for them if they came to my community. I would make sure they had. And so that's how my relationship to this place is. There's always a respect of whose land it is, but I still feel like I'm able to make a place for myself as a Métis person here.
Territory, who is practicing on Algonquin territory. So I guess in a nutshell, I think this is if this is Algonquin territory, then you're not Algonquin, from what I can tell.
No.
You don't look Algonquin, no. And I'm not, so we're visiting.
Yeah.
And so the way I behave when I'm visiting on someone else's territory is to be respectful. Like I think it's respectful to say that Algonquins ought to be running this territory. And I think it's respectful by welcoming other people who come here, because I've been made to feel just as welcome. So, you know, it's, and I'm fairly, whether it be peaceful or neutral, because this isn't my territory. I'm visiting here, and I respect it enough to do whatever I can to help it. So that's just how, maybe that's Métis teachings, 101 or 100, but that's how I've been taught. I don't go running around thinking I'm from here, and this is my backyard, and you know, I'm the cultural keeper of everything Métis here.
That's a good question. What keeps me here? Well, for one thing, I think I found a root. Prior to coming to live in Ottawa, I used to move a lot because I never felt as though I could find my root, or I couldn't find a place to lay down my head and bury that seed to form the root.
In the end, I found the research experience to be rewarding, and I was comforted by the research interviews and the time taken to listen to the stories of the Indigenous experience today.